All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Women in Hospitality panel, the second event for hospitality. And I'm Angie Center. I'm the professor of event management here at WSU. If you are joining us, if you could please mute your mic, that would be great. But please do leave your camera on. And if you don't have your name listed, please do so as well. That way our speakers can see who is on the call with us. So a few other quick housekeeping things before we start. If you are a student that is attending for extra credit in a class, we will be getting the Zoom attendance report on the back end and sharing that with the relevant faculty members. And then if you need amplifier credit for this event, at the end of the event, we'll have a QR code that we'll just put up on the screen. So you can do that for amplifier credit as well. So yes, please do turn on your camera so we can see your bright, shiny faces, but please do mute so we don't pick up your background noise, please. We have special guests today with us from ForwardThinking. ForwardThinking is an AHLA Foundation initiative aimed at mentoring, educating, and leading women to the next level of their career. If you're not familiar with AHLA, Amy did send out some pre-work information about ForwardThinking and them, but that is the American Hotel and Lodging Association. So this is an initiative special to them, and we're very glad to partner with them yet again this year to bring you this panel. Be thinking of some questions that you might want to ask throughout the presentation or towards the end. And like I said, please keep your camera on and please add your name if you haven't done so we can see who is with us today. Our moderator is Liz Delager. And I will let her introduce herself, and then I will let the panelists take it from there. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you to both Amy and Angie for helping to coordinate this panel. Thank you so much for having us and for you all for joining us today. We are so happy to be with you and here with you virtually at Washington State. As Angie said, my name is Liz Dolliger. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Merite Hotel Management that's based in Springfield, Oregon. And I'm looking forward to moderating today's session. A couple of takeaways from today's session. These are good. It is possible to have an aspirational career and a personal life. And most of you are familiar with the important role operations plays in a hotel, but the hospitality industry does offer many other exciting career choices. So our panelists today are from a variety of areas in the industry, and we hope you'll be interested in hearing about their experience and what led them to hospitality and just kind of expand maybe your thought of what hospitality is or can be. So without further ado, let's meet our panelists. First up is Lee, and what I'll do is I will turn it over to them and have them do a short introduction. You'll get to know more about them as we go, but Lee, you are first up to say hello and share a little bit about who you are.
Awesome. Nice to meet everyone virtually. My name is Lee Swistock. I am the Director of Human Resources at the Hilton Salt Lake City Center. And just kind of a tidbit about me, I have been with Hilton for 5 years as of today. I'm celebrating my 5-year anniversary, so very exciting. Yes.
I don't know if you guys do snaps, but that's what I do on virtual meetings. So we'll just give her some snaps. There we go. All right. Caitlin. Sorry, I keep calling you Kate, but I think
Hi, no, Kate's perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Mason. I'm the Senior Director of Franchise Development Strategy at Choice Hotels. I'm based out of Bethesda, Maryland. And a personal fact about me, I have 2 young daughters, a 9-month-old and a 2.5-year-old. So I have my hands full at home.
Naps for that. Okay. Anne.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anne Shimabukuro. I'm Vice President of Finance for PM Hotel Group based in Chevy Chase, Maryland. And I'm on the other end of it. I have 2 daughters who are 20 and 22 years old. So I am an empty nester and enjoying it.
Great. Well, thank you. So those are our panelists today. We also have Deb Cox, Senior Consultant for the AHLA Foundation. and just amazing woman. If you don't know her, you should. And then Twana, Rachel Woods, our representative from the Forward Network. Snaps. I guess you guys aren't talking, so we'll just snap for you. Okay. So this program is a bit different as we actually don't have, I don't know if I'm supposed to even read this part. Okay. I hope everyone has, oh boy, hold on, you guys. I'm reading the wrong section. Okay. So housekeeping rules. You saw that we will be recorded. This is a really large group. So we're going to ask that you put your questions in the chat. I would wait a little bit, or if you put them in, maybe I'll have Deb or somebody moderate that because I can't look at all the things at once. But if you have questions, chat's probably going to be the easiest. And we want questions, so please don't be shy. And if you're thinking that somebody else is wanting to know too, and just from the little bit I know about my fellow panelists, we're all pretty open. So if you, again, don't be shy. Ask us anything you want. Now's your chance. We won't have any breakouts today. We're going to stay in this big group. And we remind our cameras on, which looks like most people are doing. Okay, I think I covered all of the things. Are we ready to get started? Thumbs up if you're ready. Okay. All right. I feel like I'm yelling. Okay. Thanks for laughing, Amy Alonso. Okay. So question one, we shared our roles at our companies, but what are our responsibilities and kind of our day-to-day work? What, you know, like, for example, we don't know what a VP of finance might do all day, right? So we're going to start again with Lee in HR and talk a little bit about what she does and her responsibility.
Yes. So like I mentioned, I've been with Hilton for about 5 years now, but I've been at my property about 4.5 in a couple of different roles here. But I do work at the property level in hotels. So we are actually at one location in Salt Lake City. So my day-to-day is different every day, as you can imagine, in human resources. Really depends on what walks through the door on any given day. We have about 200 team members, so primarily I will manage the day-to-day HR operation for our team members on site here. A lot of that includes investigations, corrective action, terminations, leave of absence, ADA accommodation, all that good stuff. But we do have a little bit of fun too. So we also get to plan a lot of team member engagement activities, events. We actually did over 60 different team member engagement activities last year. So things like lunch and learns for development. We also do a hiking with Hilton program as well. So our team members can actually get off site and thrive a little bit outside of work. So really every day looks different. Some days I feel like a teacher, some days a counselor, lawyer, some days too. That's a fun one. And then other days therapist, you know, it really just depends. But generally speaking, manage the kind of day-to-day HR operation on site here at the hotel.
Great, thank you. What about you, Kate?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm in franchise development on the sales strategy and support side. So I like to talk about our department as the connection point between headquarters and our brand strategy and our financial goals and our go-to-market sales strategy. So at the highest level, my department's really responsible for making sure that our sales associates are targeting the right market, asset owner, to make sure that every single deal that we execute is going to be a successful project for Choice and our owners. So in doing that, we're really supposed to equip our sales associates with everything they need to be successful. Think about data, tools, technology, and process so that they can spend their day focusing on what they're good at, which is relationship building and negotiations. So my department's made up of two core functions, our sales planning and analytics function and our sales enablement function. And similarly to Lee, my day can look really different every day. Sales is a very fast-paced part of the industry, but it can look like looking at sales results and figuring out how we might need to adapt our go-to-market strategy. It could be evaluating new brand launches, or it could be looking at our technology systems to make sure our sales team actually uses it. So it looks different every day, but in short, it's setting the strategy and then making sure we actually execute that strategy.
Awesome. Thank you. And what about you?
So like I said, I'm VP of Finance for PM Hotel Group. We manage about 70 hotels. And so I am on a daily basis looking at the cash position for each of those hotels, as well as for our company, the management company. We need to make sure that the hotels have liquidity to be able to pay their payroll, their debt service, all of their bills. And then we look longer term as well. So for example, if a hotel needs renovation, do they have funding to be able to reinvest in the hotel? Or do we need to help them find a new loan or a lease or make introductions? So we have relationships with many banks. I do a lot of owner relations. We have a wide variety of owners and they all need a different level of handholding. So we have some large institutional investors and then we have small mom and pop investors. And this might be, this is their retirement. So this is their baby. So we really need to understand kind of where our owners are coming from and what kind of support they may need. Some of the other things that I deal with on the finance side, or they might be tangentially related to finance. We help the owners place insurance. We may help them with property tax appeals and relationship with the government. When we were in COVID, we helped them get loans and grants from the federal government and all of the local and state governments. And one of the areas that I had worked in before was on the financing side. So I actually do a lot of discussions with lenders as well to try to get refinances or improvements in loan terms. So I think this is a great opportunity for me because I was always like a very quantitative person, but I have worked in different industries. And I feel that the hospitality industry is a great way for me to kind of blend my interests on the analytical side and the people side.
Love that. So as I mentioned, am the Chief Operating Officer for Merite Hotel Management Group. So I am responsible for operations of our management company, our hotel's performance, and then for leading our growth strategies and efforts. So I wear a lot of hats. We're a smaller company with only 20 hotels. And so all of that means I oversee operations, HR, sales and marketing, revenue management, and business development, and work closely with our CFO on the accounting, analytics, reporting, and finance side. I lead and participate in owner communications and relations, similar to what Anne was just saying. So that's a lot of meeting with owners regularly and talking to them about hotel performance or representing their business interests. To our franchise partners, to government entities, just like Anne said, and other stakeholders as needed. My day-to-day, and I thought about this a little bit, my day-to-day is a lot of coaching, directing and planning with the internal staff. Yeah, Kate's like, yeah. And then, and then I spend about 65% of my time in meetings. I'm on the road about half the time. And then about half my time is external. So I know that's kind of 3 different metrics, but I was trying to be like, how would I explain this? But it's pretty even split external and internal people that I interact with. But most of that interaction is in meeting format, either like this or in person on the road. So it's a really nice variety. And I don't think I'm going to share this later, so I'll mention it here. I started on property. I did not go to school for hotels. So I started as an on property front desk agent, and then went to school for something else. We won't talk about that. And then I went and got a sales and marketing job at a hotel. And so that's how I've come up in the industry. Is I really fell in love at my first front desk job, which was a summer gig. And then now I'm COO of a management company. So kind of crazy. Okay, so moving on. I don't see any questions yet, but you guys, I'm waiting patiently. We're going to move on to a new topic. Oh,
Did you submit?
hi, Jack.
I s-
Jack. Okay, you got it. Achieving work-life balance, right? This is a fun topic people like to talk about. It's challenging to manage. So Kate, can you give us maybe an example? You mentioned you have a family at home,
Yes.
and how you have successfully kind of navigated that and your goals as a professional at the same time.
Yeah, so I teed this up exactly for this very
You
question.
did.
But this is such an important topic. You're going to go through a lot of different stages in your life and in your career where you're just going to have to reevaluate this. And what used to work might not continue to work. I can't say for certain that I've ever been 100% successful at a work-life balance, but what I can say is that I've taken some pause at different stages of my life and thought about, is this still working for me? So I mentioned I recently started a family. Prior to starting a family, I would say I was in a hamster wheel of productivity. I would constantly raise my hand for new projects while keeping my current workload. And maybe that was working for me at the time, but I really had to readjust that when I had a baby. There's a famous saying out there, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. I laugh every time I hear that because I'm like, that's why they give me all the work because I get it done. So once I had a baby, I had to show up a little bit differently and I had to reassess how I was going to show up differently. So I like to kind of focus on three main areas when I do that. The first is how am I going to work smarter or differently and prioritize. So I have a finite amount of time. How am I going to use a different or smaller amount of time to still achieve results? And that meant looking at the work I was doing and think about what's really driving value and what might just be a check the box and start reprioritizing. If you never heard of the 80-20 principle, it says that 80% of the results come from 20% of the work. So basically it's saying if you're going to spend time on something, spend time on something that matters. And that's what I tried to do. The second thing I did was communicate differently and really, set expectations and talk differently in conversations. So when new projects came on my plate, it was more conversations like, I can do this, but not that, or I can do this by X date, and really be upfront about that. And lastly, it was about resetting my boundaries. So I was going to show up differently. I wasn't going to stay at the office till 7. I was going to leave at 5 for daycare. So I had to tell them what was off limits and how I was going to show up. And what's most important is if you actually say what your boundaries are and you communicate them, you are more likely to keep them. So that's something to consider. So I would just say if you're going to consistently reevaluate this throughout your life, you're going to constantly need to say, is this working for me? Do I need to reset? And when you come to those stages in your life, I would just ask yourself, can I work smarter? Can I prioritize? Do I need to reset my boundaries? Do I need to communicate differently? And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I think all of those are really good points. Anne, do you want to share a little bit about your experience?
Sure. So I also had a family when I was working at Marriott. I've always been at the corporate level, and I was at Marriott right when I got married, and then had 2 children very quickly after that. And I was really happy actually working at a company that was recognized as being like a great place for working mothers. They had an on-site daycare that I got into after a short stint on the waiting list. And I wasn't afraid to show up as a mother because there were a lot of other moms and dads at the daycare. There were kids in the building. And so people knew, that I came in with 2 kids. I thought of it as almost golden handcuffs because I was so happy with the daycare situation that I never would think of leaving while my kids were there. And they were there from infant through preschool, like 5 years each. I was lucky in that my role did not require really any travel. I was doing corporate finance, and it was really, in the building outside the corporate headquarters. And the daycare was open long hours so that they would accommodate our meeting schedules. But I did try to limit night and weekend work. Rarely worked nights and weekends. And I did have, one VP who commented after I had come back after maternity leave, and she said to my direct supervisor, Anne's not here as long as she used to be. But my supervisor said, Anne is the most productive person that I have. And so, kind of like what Caitlin was saying, you have to really just decide what you're going to work on. I made my days really full, but they were not necessarily long. The other thing that I was able to do in the summers, when my kids were out of the Marriott daycare and were going to elementary school, went to summer camp, and I would have the bus drop them off at Marriott at the end of the day. And so they would come into the building. I had their clothes on over their swimsuits and got them a snack. And then we all went back up to my office. And so they could kind of, play while I was finishing up my work. And I didn't feel like I needed to, again, hide the fact that I was a working mom. And I was lucky enough that I had, an office with a door so we could have some privacy. So now I am an empty nester. And the temptation is to just work longer hours. But I don't want to do that. So again, I'm not working late. I'm not working on the weekends. And my husband and we try to make like a date to go to the gym after work, because otherwise you are as tempted to just continue working or to bring your work home. So I've found that, with a corporate or above property job, I've been able to continue to limit my travel. These days I could travel more, but it is nice to be able to kind of say, okay, I'm done for the evening and I'm not going to look at my computer again until Monday morning.
Great. Thank you. I was just looking because we have our first question. I'm going to let Lee answer, and then I might take the question unless Lee has something to say about it. But yeah, go ahead, Lee.
Perfect. Sounds great. So, I will certainly echo what Anne and Caitlin mentioned. I think a big theme is prioritization. So getting more work done in a shorter amount of time. I am not in the stage of life yet where I have kids or those responsibilities. I know it'll come one day. But kind of on the flip side of things, it has led me down a path of working really long hours because I have no one else, that is depending on me to get home to, right? So a big lesson that I've learned in the past couple of years has been almost anything can wait until tomorrow. And I really learned this lesson during COVID. Imagine being versus during that period. It was a very challenging time in a lot of ways. And in the span of 1 week, we went from about 200 team members to 25 active team members. And I was the only one managing our 25 active team members and 175 furloughed team members who had a lot of questions and, also needed a lot of support during that time. And it only took about 2 months of me coming home at 9:30, most nights before I was like, I can't do this anymore. It will burn you out really quickly. And I think that the big takeaway for me was I don't need to be here until, really much past 6:30 most days. Most of what I need to accomplish, I can do tomorrow. And having to really put those boundaries up, I think it really helped just establish that, it is my time to leave, and I really respect my home life as much as my work life, and I need to, keep that boundary up as well. So it's been a big lesson I've learned over the years.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing and for giving a different perspective. I didn't mention it at the beginning, but I'm also a mom. I have 2 kids. My kids are 18 and 20. So I have a senior graduating high school and then a college student. So I'm almost empty nester with Anne. I'm not counting down the days, or am I? Maybe. So I echo everything that's been said. I think it's all fairly accurate. And good advice. I think for me, as my kids got older, and it's very easy in this industry and in the kinds of work and the jobs that the 4 of us have, or even if you're on property for that matter, the hours and the time that you work is pretty challenging, and it can just take over if you're not intentional about it. That's the word that I like to use. So in my notes, I said, I have to tell myself every week and every day to be intentional about taking care of me. And it's not about self-care. I'm not like taking a bubble bath. It's just like, did I schedule a time to exercise or go to the gym, right? Did I schedule time to read a book I want to read, not a book I have to read, right? Like all these things. So for me, making time with friends, exercise, I calendar everything because otherwise it won't happen because my calendar will just get full. So I am very, I take my planner at work, my planner brain, and I kind of apply it to me to make sure that I'm getting the things that keep me happy and centered and going and motivated and all of that. That's not work related. So I'm very intentional about scheduling those things because it is challenging in this industry. Somebody asked on here, Danae, have we ever encountered discrimination or bias related to a decision to start a family? And I'll comment quickly and then I'll open it if the panelist wants to comment. But yes, I've been in the industry 25 plus years. My time coming up on property was full of some interesting stories I won't bore you with, but yes, absolutely. One of my favorite examples, I talk about this now that I'm in a position to influence some of this change. I was in a meeting. We had 2 candidates internal at the company I was with at the time. One father of 3 under the age of 6, one a mother of 2 under the age of maybe 8. And you would not have believed the conversation about her ability to travel, her willingness to work long hours, to do the job, etc. I was the only woman in the room. And I said, well, do you know that he has 3 children under the age of 6? And they were like, oh, no, but that probably won't impact his travel, will it? Right. So I didn't receive that. Yeah. Danae's like, So those conversations, what makes me excited about that story is I was in the room to point it out. Right. So being in the room matters and calling it out when you hear it matters. And then for me, I had a much different experience than Anne had. My employer, when I had my kids, no one at my work knew I had children. Maybe one person. It would have, in my opinion, I would have not been promoted. I would have not been nothing. So yes, I think it still happens. It happens less, but you'd be surprised the conversations that go on. And so that's why we want women in the room, right? And women on the board and in those roles to make sure that those things don't kind of happen. But yes, I absolutely have experienced some interesting bias. I think a lot of unconscious bias, and then discrimination maybe, but unconscious bias for sure. Anyone else want to comment on that question? Okay. Cool. They're like, no, Liz, stop talking about this. Okay. Moving on. So, I kind of touched on this again with where I started, so we'll hear from someone else. Maybe Anne can start us off on how did you figure out what direction you wanted your career to go in, and were there any external factors at play?
Sure. Well, I didn't necessarily start out thinking I'm going to end up in finance or hospitality. I did study finance as an undergrad, and I went into management consulting because I thought it would be just like a really good introduction to business. I worked for a small consulting firm where I worked in many industries: the paper industry, consumer packaged goods, pharmaceuticals, and it was like a really great launching pad. Then I went to business school, and I just got an MBA without a major or a specialty. But I was looking for jobs mainly in finance, kind of, looking back to my undergraduate degree. And I ended up at the Walt Disney Company. It was a great company. I was in the consumer products area and had the chance to travel a lot. I moved every year for 3 or 4 years. Every, new job I got was in a different place. So I was in LA, in Hong Kong, and New York. And all this time I was dating my boyfriend long distance, and thought, well, if we're ever going to get married, we need to live in the same city. And so I made the decision to leave Disney, even though I loved the company, and look for a job in the Washington, D.C. area. And I was, again, looking in finance because it was a very transferable skill, right? Every company needs finance. Every industry needs finance. And I ended up, through a headhunter, finding a position in the telecom industry. Worked there for 4 years, got married, and then I was laid off. And that's when I found a position, again through a headhunter, at Marriott. And I came in with finance experience, but not hospitality experience. But I was able to hit the ground running, doing financial planning and analysis and budgeting. So again, I was really grateful to have a very transferable skill. And I've been in hospitality now for about 20 years. I was laid off from Marriott after 12 years, after they did a reorg, and I ended up doing some non-hospitality jobs. I was at a nonprofit, I was with the federal government before I found my way back to hospitality. And that's another good story, which I think I'll save for later.
Great. Does someone want to go next? Lee, do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I kind of was a bit like Anne. I didn't know exactly what path I wanted to take starting out. I actually went to community college before transferring to a four-year university. While I was in community college, I got really involved in campus events. And so I kind of thought, let me explore this event route. Maybe that's a career path that I could look into. And so I ended up transferring to UCF in Orlando, Florida, with this idea that I'm going to pursue events. It didn't take long after I got there that I realized not all event positions have the best hours or work-life balance. And that was something that I really valued and, wanted to focus on in my future. So started exploring different options in college, and I got into the front desk with Marriott actually as well, and started exploring hotels and really opened my eyes to all the different opportunities that there are within the hospitality industry and specifically within our hotels too. I mean, you can have 10 different careers within the same property, which is pretty incredible. So I think the biggest takeaway that I had from a lot of different experiences as I was going throughout this journey is to say yes to every experience. You want to test the waters. I think it's almost just as important to find out what you don't want to do as it is to what you do want to do. I actually had we had a individual come in and do a speaking session during college, one of our classes, and she was a funeral director at the local cemetery. And she said, hey, you know what? If you want to come job shadow for the day, see what this career is all about, let me know. And so I had reached out to her. I actually went and shadowed with her for the day at the cemetery. We walked the grounds. She gave me the tour. We talked about, what the day in her life looks like. And at the end of the day, made me realize that's not the path that I wanted to take. But just as important to, really find out by testing out the waters in each area, what you don't want to do. And I think it helps really narrow down in what you do want to do and focus in that area.
Yeah, for sure. I think I had a similar response as I focused on what made me happy. I think the more modern way to say it now is whatever brought me joy. I kept kind of going that direction and avoided the others, or was like, okay, no, next, let's go to the next thing. So awesome. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, Kate, and have you talk a little bit about a time you had to put yourself out there and not just sit back. So maybe a little bit farther along than the first career part, but thought you had some interesting things to say about this.
Yeah, sure. So this is a bit of a recent example, but there's a time that I felt like I was ready for a promotion, and I talked to my boss about this. I asked for it, and the company kind of felt it was necessary that I take on some additional responsibilities as part of the promotion. And there wasn't really anything in the works for me to take on. And my boss said, we're going to discuss options. We want this for you. But I wasn't really sure how proactive those conversations were happening. And I really wanted to have some control over how and when that happened. So I really wanted to put myself out there. I put a business case together on what I thought my promotion should be, including what additional responsibilities I thought I could take on, how many people, who I wanted on my team, and then most importantly, why I thought this would be a great move for the company. And then I shopped it around. I shared it with my boss. I shared it with all my advocates across the company. And in shopping it around, I learned that I had a really unique and valuable perspective that I brought to the table that they really didn't have when they were discussing the future for me and my department. And I was able to uncover some really valuable opportunities for the company that ultimately led them to, providing me with that promotion. So if I hadn't put my ideas out there, I definitely wouldn't have gotten the promotion. But my biggest takeaway was that I should never assume that anyone, even someone more senior than me, has thought of everything. And they hired you for your unique perspective. Your role in the organization gives you a different viewpoint than they might have. So I wouldn't be shy about putting yourself out there and sharing your ideas and really finding your voice in these conversations.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think I get asked occasionally why I'm also in charge of business development as a previous director of sales and marketing, and it's very similar. Spent a lot of time being like, what else can I learn? What can I do? Where can I add value? And I felt that in those, similar to what you do now, right? Looking at markets and what hotel brand might make sense, and working on the operating projections and really giving them some feedback. Anyway, that's how that grew, but it was me kind of bringing it to them. No one was saying, oh, Liz should do development, right? Like I had to be like, hey, I don't want to do what I'm doing anymore. I've got it. I need something else. And so I think it's really important, that initiative. For those of you that are still with us listening, initiative is what I think the takeaway is there, is taking some initiative for your own career path. So let's talk a little bit about career development experiences. I'll start this one. I had a really fun one for you all. So I got, this is about feedback we get throughout our careers, or times where we had some tough feedback to hear, and how we maybe didn't quit or overcame it. So I had a 360. If you don't know what that is, that's when they survey your boss, your direct reports, your colleagues, basically everyone around you, right? 360, and have them evaluate your work. So my survey came back. I love this. Are you ready? Competent, but not trustworthy, not good character. Oh yeah, you can make big eyes. Yeah, that was a fun meeting, let me tell you. So I could have gotten offended and upset and quit, maybe, I don't know, because I'm pretty sure no one goes to work and thinks they're not trustworthy and thinks they're not doing, that they're not a good person. But it was very eye-opening. And at the time I was mature enough, thankfully, that I was like, okay, it doesn't matter that I don't think it's a problem. It matters that all of these people basically feel the same way. They think I'm competent at my job, but they don't particularly trust me as a person. So my huge takeaway, my work, I was lucky enough. It wasn't all bad. It wasn't all the bad, no baby, no kids. It wasn't, I promise. I had lots of good. And one of the good was, my employer at the time offered a coach to work with me outside of the organization, and said, hey, we think you could figure this out, and you can fix this because you are really good, and we're going to invest in that. So they hired me a coach. I agreed to work with the coach. Again, challenging, right? To take a stranger telling you how to behave at work in order to get better. Okay, I did it. But the one thing that they had me do is that I still use to this day is making sure your vision of success is the same as whoever you're working with. I do this with my direct reports. I do it with my boss. I do it with a GM that I encounter for maybe 15 minutes in passing, and say, what does your vision of success look like? And how does that align with the vision for our company, for myself, for the owner, whoever it is? Aligning visions makes everything happen faster and quicker. And so while that was a painful development experience for me, if you can get past your own stuff and take the feedback for what it is and focus on where you need to go, that those experiences in my experience stay with you more than the others, because I learned this new skill that I didn't even know I needed, and now I use it 20 years later, right? So it was a really hard moment in my professional career, but it was one that I am very, very grateful for. So that's my little blurb on hard feedback. Lee, do you, or Anne? I'll let either one of you.
Yeah, I can go ahead and jump in on this one. So I have kind of a different career development experience to share. So as you probably can tell, I'm a bit young, you may say, to be in this position. So I joined Hilton, and I was in the management development program when I started out. So it essentially is an accelerator to get into a manager role faster than you generally would if you were coming from outside the organization. So I joined as a housekeeping trainee, at management trainee. And I think originally joining, the team didn't know who I was. They didn't know why I was there or that I was qualified to now be leading them, right? And I found this to be very true in my roles in HR now as well. A huge takeaway that I gained from that experience of having to kind of figure it out along the way is the value of understanding the people around you and the work that they do before trying to lead them. And I spent a lot of time in the rooms with our room attendants, on the floors with our laundry team, delivering linen, helping actually clean the rooms, whatever it may be, to gain an understanding of the work that they do every day. And so now when they come to me with challenges or questions or issues, I can appropriately answer and lead them really in the way that, they need to be led. And so I think it really stemmed from the beginning of my career with Hilton, but now in the capacity that I'm in as well, I had been promoted pretty quickly into the role that I'm in. And so I now have a seat at the table of our executive committee as well. And this is a room of very influential, really strong people in the organization. This is our general manager, director of operations, sales and marketing, director of finance, all of these really key people that make our business run. And I've had a lot of imposter syndrome in the past, year while being in this role. And I think a big part of it is understanding that I'm here for a reason, right? And I've been promoted this position for a reason, and that I do have a seat at the table. And I think a big part of it, and I forget if it was Liz or Caitlin who mentioned this earlier, but when there are things that need to be said, speaking up and not being afraid to voice what your thoughts are, your concerns are, because you do have a really valuable seat at the table as well.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Anne, do you want to add to any of that?
Yes, just building on something that Lee said. If there's no one who's like stepping up for something, or you see that there's a vacuum, you can fill that hole. There have been a couple of times in my career where I found that I was, good in a crisis, right? Like after 9/11, Marriott had really like a difficult time quantifying what the downside risk might be to the company financially. Marriott had made loans to many hotel owners and had even made guarantees saying, if you can't make your debt service payment, we'll pay it, or we guarantee you'll make a 10% return every year. So I led a team of people within my department, within financial planning and analysis, to just pour through these legal documents to see what exactly was the downside exposure in each one of these transactions. And in most cases, there was a bottommost or like maximum amount of money that the company could lose, right? If they said, we'll guarantee you 10%. Okay, 10% of what? Or we guarantee you'll make your debt service payment. Well, how much is that? And I put together an analysis that said, okay, this is, the largest maximum loss. It was something like $100 million. And we took it as a charge. And Wall Street really commended us for kind of getting it out there and then just put it behind them, And so I kind of thought like, oh my God, did we just like take $100 million loss because of what I did? But it was something that, no one was the expert in this. And so you can roll up your sleeves and kind of become the expert. And then more recently with COVID, again, it was travel that stopped like on a dime. And we had to move very quickly. And like Lee said, unfortunately downsize or put people on furlough to be able to conserve cash. And then look for sources of loans or grants or anything. So we had to close some of our hotels temporarily, but we didn't lose any of the hotels, right? We were able to like reopen them, those that had closed within a number of months. But I would say like 55 out of the 60 that we had at that time just kind of continued through. And I'm really proud of that, So if there's no one who's the expert, you can become the expert. And, that will just lead people to see kind of what you're capable of.
Yeah, I think that's great. Sorry. Okay. Let's talk about, we have like 15 minutes left, so I want to leave like 10 minutes for questions. Is that good? Anybody? Yeah. Okay. So start putting those questions in the chat. Before we go to questions, we'll talk a little bit about mentors, champions, and advocates. And Anne, I'm going to have you start, even though you just talked, but I think, please, share your experience with having an advocate or mentor. And
I don't think I've had like a traditional mentor, but I've learned from everyone that I've worked for. I've learned a lot from the women I've worked for who were moms or not moms. And I feel like I've also had a number of really good male allies. There was one gentleman who I worked with when I was in telecom who I kept in touch with. I had been laid off. And he's continued on with that company, but we kept in touch. And then, years later, he was looking for a change. And so we reconnected, and he ended up in the federal government as the CFO of one of the agencies. And even though I was in another role at the time, he reached out because he knew I had recently been looking. And then I went to work for him again. And the last two positions I've gotten have been through networking. That was one. And then the other was, this was the story I was saving. I was with my daughters at a lacrosse tryout, and they had been playing lacrosse since they were like in first and second grade. And so I knew a lot of the family, a lot of the moms. And at this particular tryout, it was raining and I was holding my Marriott umbrella. And so this other mom said, "Oh, I didn't know you worked at Marriott." And I said, "Well, I don't work there anymore, but I was there for about 12 years. And she asked what I had done at Marriott. And I said, "Well, I was in finance for like 10 of those years. And then I was in operations for 2 years." And she said, "Well, my husband is the CFO of a hotel company and he needs help." So she called him up right then and there and asked him what positions he had open. And he said, "Well, I have like an accounting position and a finance position." And she said, "Anne can do the finance position." So I emailed him my resume right away. And that's how I got into PM Hotel Group. I had seen the CFO's wife for years. And I guess he was never at the practices or the games because he was too busy working. And so now he can go to the games too. And just, as a coincidence, our girls went to rival schools. So they would play against each other in both field hockey and lacrosse. And people at our office would like make bets. But it was a fun way to get into the company. And also showed me that, a lot of the senior team actually have their athletes themselves or parents of athletes. And so that's something that we also value is, taking time off to be able to go to our kids' games.
Yeah, and I think the networking piece is critical, right? So just wherever you are, you just never know who you're talking to or who they know. So that's
right.
Always a good thing. And I think Caitlin, you have some notes about finding a mentor and
yeah, I'll be nice and quick
because
because I know we only have a couple of minutes. But I know that when I was younger and earlier on in my career, everyone would talk about mentors and it would just stress me out because I was like, oh, how do I find a mentor? Like, do I just go up and ask them, "Hey, will you be my mentor?" And how do I find the right one? And I want to make sure they're perfect. And so someone gave me some advice. They were like, don't think about just getting one person. Think about you're the CEO of your career. Get a personal board of directors who's going to be your sounding board, who's going to give you advice, who's going to fill in your gaps, maybe your biases, your blind spots. And they're going to help you throughout your career. But it doesn't need to be one perfect person who helps you with everything. It can be many moments with many people that help you throughout your career. So after I got that advice, I kind of took a step back and looked at who do I have and, who I could call my personal board of directors. And I realized I already had a lot of people that fit the bill. And I sort of found where my gaps were, and that helped direct my search and sort of figure out, where I need to go from there. So if you're wondering like who should be on my personal board of directors, I always say, in many ways it's going to be organic, but look for the people who have some sort of subject matter expertise in your career or industry. So it could be a professor, it could be, a friend, a colleague, internal, external in your company. Look for people whose opinions you value. Look for people who are your role models. Who do you want to be? Seek out their advice. And I think just remembering that people are more open to grabbing coffee than you might think. So don't be shy to ask and just put yourself out there.
I love that. Yes, I second all of that. I think it's exactly right. I have had lots of mentors, formal and informal. So like Caitlin just said, some didn't even know they were mentoring me, but I was still asking them questions. But I love my story with AHLA. I had messaged Lan, who's on some of our emails, and not all of the students will know who that is, but she's was a chief investment officer. My background, as I mentioned before, was not in hospitality or business, by the way. And so, yeah, somebody should laugh at that. Yeah. Oh no, she's just talking, Olivia. Hi. So anyway, so I had messaged her via LinkedIn. I mean, I had, and I think I had messaged 2 other women actually after the Forward conference. And they were too busy, and that was fine. And and so I messaged Lynn and I said, hey, I'm, looking for someone to just chat about finance, and I'm in this role and I'd really just love to pick your brain. And she responded, and 2 years later, we talk all the time. I've met her in person. She, is my sounding board when I am like, I have no idea where to start with this. It saves me again, a lot of time, of trying to figure it out on my own. It also gets you out of yourself. One of the things that she first told me when I first started chatting with her is, wait, you're emailing all of these things to your team? And I was like, well, yeah, like everyone's either remote or busy. She's like, no, you got to go talk to them and just meet, and I'm a salesperson. I know that, right? But I needed someone to say, hey, you stop emailing because you're so busy and they're so busy. Like, go talk to them face to face. And this is internal employees. And I just was like, oh my gosh, Lan, that is correct. But I'm so in it and so, focused. The basics are eluding me. So we have 7 minutes. I don't see any questions. Thank you, Twana, for keeping the chat alive. I appreciate you. I will keep talking. I have some advice to share, and then I'll ask the other ladies to share their advice unless somebody asks us a question. So my advice, I have a list, but I'm going to go through it quick and I'll probably summarize some of it. But especially for those of you coming out of school, I had to interview and apply multiple times. Oh, someone asked me a question. Okay, I'm going to be quick. For the jobs that I've held. So I applied to be a sales coordinator. If you looked me up on LinkedIn at Kimpton, it took me 3 times. I would walk down to the hotel multiple times and say, I will take any job. I knew that's where I wanted to work, blah, blah, blah. Sales manager, I didn't get promoted to sales manager without applying and going through an interview process 3 times in the company I was working at, not somewhere else, in the company I was at. So just know that like things don't happen sometimes like you think, and that's normal. It's okay. So we're talking about, managing your career and having your mentors and all these things, but just know that those things don't just still fall into place perfectly. Being persistent, professional, but persistent is key. and focused. Another thing I like to share specifically with women, I see a lot of resumes. I know what your job is, or I can guess by the job title. I need to know what you accomplished. So please shift your resume to what you accomplished versus your job tasks. That's the number one mistake I see mostly by women, where they'll list all their job responsibilities or tasks in the to-dos, but no results. Results. The other thing I'll say is keep a list of all of your work experience, volunteer, any of your wins in a professional environment. You're not going to remember them. And so keeping a running list for for your professional life. I still do this now. I have a year in review document. I track all of my wins. I track all of my losses. I'm very intentional about that, but it is helpful when it's time to go look for a job. You don't have to be like, oh, what were my results? What did I do well? I don't know, because now I'm looking for a job, right? So keep that going. Okay, those are my few tips for you coming out of school and hitting the road there. Questions. I saw one. How do you stay updated on industry trends and continually enhance your skills? I read all night. No, I'm just kidding, but kind of not kidding. Okay, who else? And I know you have something to say.
Now, I am in a monthly meeting that's kind of a cross-discipline meeting where we're kind of reviewing our monthly results for all the hotels. And we started something which I really enjoy, which is just going around the room and everyone bringing up something newsworthy. And we'll get all sorts of things. People will talk about AI, about sales, about new brands, about legislation. But it's having the opportunity to kind of talk with people who are outside of your normal sphere. So I feel like I always learn in that meeting.
I love that. I love that idea. Anybody else want to comment on how you stay updated?
Yeah, I'll share. So in the HR realm, and honestly, most professional kind of tracks, you have professional associations that provide a lot of awesome information on industry trends, trainings, development, so many different things. So for me in human resources, I am SHRM certified. So it's a Society of Human Resources Management. And I am always on SHRM's website, reading up on what's going on. I get their newsletters. And that's a huge way that I've been able to stay on top of things as they come in, as laws change that affect us as well, all of this information. So I would definitely advise you all, it's really great to be aware of what professional associations apply to your career. It really makes a huge difference in staying up to date.
Yeah, I would second that, and subscribing to, I probably get too many things in my email inbox, but it's helpful. Another question, how to be a standout among candidates. I talked about resume. For me, results versus tasks is huge, or responsibilities. I also am a big believer, whether virtual or in person interviews, that you dress for the job you want. Marriott, I don't know if they still do it, but the dress for your day, I love. You don't have to wear a suit every day, but I definitely am one of those that's like dress appropriately and for the job that you want, that you're aspiring to. And then I think it's just being kind of all the things we said, right? Being confident and yeah. Caitlin, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I think especially when you don't have as much professional experience to draw from, two things that really stand out for me is when you can demonstrate resourcefulness in your examples and initiative. I know we talked about initiative, but those are two huge soft skills that's I might not have experience here. I might not know everything, but I can show you that I'm resourceful and I take initiative and I'm curious. I think those are really great things to demonstrate in your interview and can help you stand out amongst your peers.
Yeah, I think being prepared as far as knowing and then being curious about their business or the opportunity or what their vision of success looks like for them or for the role that you're applying for.
I'd love to pivot too. just recommendations. So I do a lot of the recruiting and hiring on property here for our roles. And the biggest, by far, the biggest tip that I have is to reach out to the recruiter, to the hiring manager directly. You can stalk them on LinkedIn. You can find their organization online, Google them. This by far is the way that I will, like when I get someone who takes the time to actually find me and interview me or reach out to me on LinkedIn, I will tell the recruiter to pull their application right away. Let's take a look at them. So that is one thing that you can easily do with most jobs. You can kind of figure, you can kind of figure out who that person is that you need to be in touch with, reach out to them. If that's not the right person, they will connect you. It makes you stand out from the crowd more than anything else that I have seen so far.
Awesome. Thank you. We have one more question, but I know we're running out of time. So perhaps, Olivia, we can get back to you on accomplishments, or you can message me on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to take a look at your resume. I'm mentoring someone right now that I just redid her resume from responsibilities to results, and it's amazing. So do we want to do scholarship stuff first, Deb, or we're going to do the QR code?
We're going to do the QR code, or I can
Okay.
I can do the scholarship real quick.
Okay. So, do you have a slide to show?
I do.
Okay. So over $1 million in academic scholarships are awarded annually to 2-year and 4-year hospitality students that meet the criteria, which you must be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, and enrolled as a full-time student. Oh, there's the slide. So there's a link there. I think you'll get that link later as well, hopefully from Angie. Yes, Angie's nodding. And I think I'm on the scholarship committee again this year. So I did it last year. So I read I guess I probably don't read all of them. I read a stack and I rate them. So it's a great program. If you're interested, please click the link or visit the AHLA website. And then, oh my gosh, you guys, it went by so fast. So this is the end of the session. We'd love your feedback so we can continue to refine our program and how we do these, the format, etc. So there'll be a QR code on the screen that you can quickly scan. I think it's 2 minutes of your time. It would be really helpful. I'd also like to extend a special thank you to Miss Amy Alonso and Angie Center for organizing the event. To our lovely panelists, it's been fun getting to know you. And then to all of the students on today, thank you so much for your interest and for listening and for your questions. I hope you enjoyed this short time with us and that you got some tidbits to take away with you today. And then, yes, please connect with us on LinkedIn. Please message us that you were on this program so we know. But I know I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have or give you any advice or all the things. And I'm in Oregon, so if you need a job also, not too far away. And that's it. Thank you so much for your time today. Have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming and giving us all of that wonderful information. I think it's just great to hear from the different sectors. So students, there's your QR code for Amplifier. If you're viewing from different campuses, make sure that you are selecting the correct Amplifier QR code for you to get you that credit. And we get some great finger snaps for our panelists, please. It's a wonderful job. Thank you so much. I'll keep this Zoom open just for another minute or two so that you guys have access to that QR code. And then I hope you all have a wonderful day.